Every day, we each wake up to a set of routines, expectations, and worries that often threaten to dictate the course of our lives before we have even taken a single step out of bed. We check our phones, glance at the news, and scroll through social media, sometimes absorbing a surge of stress and anxiety that lodges itself deep within our hearts. In a world that seems to grow louder and more uncertain with each passing hour, many of us find ourselves asking how we can rise above the chaos and plant our feet firmly in a place of unwavering security. The answer rests in one simple yet profoundly transformative act: learning to trust in God daily. This trust transcends motivational slogans or fleeting feelings of peace, for it is a dynamic relationship that touches every facet of our existence. It invites us to draw near, to be still, to hope, and to expect greatness even when our present circumstances seem anything but promising. It is a precious spiritual treasure that not only reorients the heart, but also radically changes how we approach our fears, our dreams, and our deepest longings. When we talk about trusting in God, we might envision an effortless flow of faith that just bubbles up from within. But in reality, this kind of trust often emerges through deliberate choice, genuine surrender, and steadfast cultivation. It challenges us to look beyond what is immediately in front of us, to acknowledge the presence of a divine hand that upholds and provides, and to cultivate patience when our souls yearn for quick solutions. This isn't merely about wishful thinking or turning a blind eye to our troubles. Instead, it involves opening our eyes to see a higher perspective, to remember the promises of a loving God who is never absent even when our circumstances feel daunting. In these moments, we begin to move from a place of uncertain anxiety to a posture of quiet confidence. We grow, we learn, and we discover that our earthly struggles are not insurmountable obstacles, but rather stepping stones that strengthen our faith. May this reflection on trust in God daily resonate with your deepest fears and highest hopes, illuminating a path where faith can flourish even in the shadowy places of life. To trust in God daily is to first recognize that we all share a common human longing for security and purpose. From the moment we become aware of the world around us, we strive to make sense of our place within it. We look for patterns, relationships, and activities that affirm our sense of belonging. Some of us turn to our careers for validation and identity. Others look to family or friends, and some find solace in personal achievements or accolades. Yet there comes a point when even these good and valuable parts of life cannot fully satisfy the depths of our hearts. The question arises, where do we anchor our hope when the achievements fade, the relationships become strained, or the sense of clarity dissolves into confusion? This is where an intentional growing trust in God becomes a lifeline. It provides a foundation that does not shift with trends or circumstances, but stands firm through every season, because it is rooted in the character of the one who remains the same through all generations. The act of trusting God each day is similar to tending to a garden. If a gardener leaves the soil unattended or neglects to water the plants, weeds grow, and the once vibrant flora begin to wither. In the same way, trust in God requires daily nourishment with prayer, reflection, gratitude, and the deliberate refusal to allow fear or doubt to choke out the seeds of faith. This is a simple image, yet it illustrates a profound truth. When we actively cultivate our trust, Giving time and attention to it, it grows stronger, deepening its roots and bearing beautiful fruit that brings peace and assurance to our souls. Trust flourishes in environments where we give ourselves permission to lean on promises greater than our present fears. One of the greatest obstacles to trusting in God daily is the noise of the modern world. We live in a digital era where news stories, online commentary, and notifications bombard us at all hours. Our minds can easily become cluttered with concerns that might not even be directly related to our immediate lives. We can grow tense with the knowledge of conflicts, injustices, and disasters in distant lands. And while it is good to be informed and compassionate, it can also overwhelm our sense of personal stability. In those situations, it can help to pause and remind ourselves that God is still sovereign, present, and actively working in ways we cannot always see. By turning our attention heavenward, we regain an anchored perspective, remembering that the world's chaos does not eclipse divine sovereignty. Trusting in God daily often blossoms through the habit of prayer. In prayer, we bring our rawest emotions, our confusion, and our joys before the one who listens without judgment. We stand in humility, confessing our limitations, acknowledging that we do not hold the entire universe together by our own strength. In that moment of honest surrender, our hearts become open to receiving comfort, clarity, and guidance. Over time, prayer transforms from a mere religious exercise into a life-giving communion that reminds us of our constant companionship with the divine. It reassures us that when our own words fail, God understands the unspoken burdens we carry. Trust is fostered by these intimate encounters, where we learn to speak and also to quietly listen in the stillness. Another significant component of daily trust is remembering the promises that anchor our faith. Every faith tradition holds certain core truths about the steadfast nature of God's love and faithfulness. In the Christian tradition, for instance, these truths can be found in Scripture, where believers read about God's unchanging devotion to humanity and the assurance that we are never forgotten or forsaken. Reading these sacred texts regularly, reflecting on the accounts of others who have placed their trust in God, reminds us that our present challenges are neither new nor beyond the reach of divine intervention. In seeing how God worked in the past, we are inspired to believe in how God can act now. We become participants in a larger narrative, continuing the story of faith in our own generation. An important part of trusting God daily is acknowledging our struggles rather than burying them. Trust does not mean denying pain, avoiding grief, or pretending to be invulnerable. On the contrary, it invites us to bring our burdens honestly before God, to admit when we are weak, and to ask for help when our hearts grow weary. This is often the space where true transformation occurs, because in facing our limitations, we open ourselves to divine strength and wisdom. It is the paradox of faith that when we accept our inability to do everything on our own, we find ourselves uplifted by the care of the one who can do all things. This recognition of our own frailty leads us closer to God's heart and nurtures humility, a necessary ingredient for genuine trust. Trusting God in the midst of difficult circumstances is sometimes the most harrowing and also the most powerful demonstration of faith. It is in these dark valleys that we question, wrestle, and search for meaning. The experience can be unsettling, but it often becomes the crucible in which our trust is refined. When we lose a job, face a health crisis, or watch a dream slip from our grasp, our reflex might be to feel anger or doubt. Yet even in that season of despair, trusting God means believing that there is more beyond our current pain, that doors can open where there are only walls, that hope can spring up in the scorched landscapes of our heartbreak. This choice to trust in the face of adversity can, over time, bring about a peace that surpasses our understanding, a serenity that defies logical explanation, and a deep certainty that God has not abandoned us. Trust in God is also expressed through gratitude. Far from being a shallow positivity exercise, genuine gratitude comes from recognizing the sustaining grace that envelops us in small and large ways every day. When we focus our attention on blessings, answered prayers, opportunities, and even lessons that come through hardship, we remind ourselves that the universe is not empty or hostile, but filled with traces of divine generosity. By practicing gratitude, we train our minds to notice how God's hand continues to move in our daily lives. This perspective shift can be truly transformative, lifting our spirits and giving us courage to face whatever challenges lie ahead. The more we recognize evidence of grace, the more our trust is reinforced. Along with gratitude, another dimension of trust in God is the willingness to step into the unknown when called. Sometimes, trusting daily means taking that leap of faith to pursue a calling that might seem daunting. It could mean launching a new endeavor, reaching out to mend a broken relationship, or simply staying faithful in a tedious job because we sense a deeper purpose in that environment. Trusting God means believing that guidance and provision will be available even when our security nets look flimsy. While we always exercise wisdom and discernment, part of trusting is accepting that we may not have every answer neatly laid out before we begin. We act out of faith, doing our part with diligence and believing that God will take care of what lies beyond our human capacities. In many ways, trusting God daily is a discipline in letting go of control. We often want to dictate how every outcome should unfold, setting rigid timelines and expectations that might not align with God's perfect timing. When events do not proceed as planned, we feel frustration and sometimes question our faith. Yet trust invites us to hold our plans with open hands, ready to adapt and surrender to a higher plan that we may not fully comprehend in the moment. Such surrender is not passive resignation, but rather an active yielding of our prideful insistence that we know best. In relinquishing control, we discover an unexpected freedom. We are no longer tethered to the burden of micromanaging every possibility. Instead, we learn to cooperate with a divine orchestration that sees far beyond our limited perspective. Our journey toward trusting God daily is also shaped by the community around us. Faith is personal, but not necessarily private. When we share life with individuals who uplift, encourage, and remind us of God's faithfulness, we find that our trust deepens in the context of supportive fellowship. We witness how others navigate hardships, celebrate blessings, and stand firm in their convictions, and their example ignites a stronger trust within our own hearts. In turn, we become a source of encouragement for others when they confront their own battles with fear and doubt. This sense of mutual strengthening is one of the gifts of collective faith, revealing that we are not meant to navigate the highs and lows of life in isolation. Yet we must also be prepared for the moments when our communal support seems distant. Sometimes we may feel alone or misunderstood by the very people we thought would stand by us. in those stretches of loneliness. Trusting God daily can feel like walking through a wilderness where silence becomes our companion. It is in these deserted places that we learn to discern the gentle whisper of God's presence. For while human friendships are precious, they are never perfect or infallible. God's faithfulness, on the other hand, does not waver. When we cling to that truth, we find that the wilderness is not empty at all, but brimming with the invitation to a deeper, more personal communion with the divine. Over time, a daily practice of trust in God begins to redefine how we approach success and failure. We begin to see that our worth is not confined to the outcomes of our efforts. When we fall short of a personal goal, we do not spiral into despair or question our identity, because we understand that our ultimate identity rests in the love of God. When we succeed, we give thanks for the opportunity to partner with divine grace in achieving something meaningful. Either way, we remain secure in the knowledge that we are embraced by a love not contingent on our performance or achievements. This kind of freedom is immensely liberating, as it releases us from the pressure to measure up to external standards. As our trust in God matures, it also reshapes our understanding of time. We no longer perceive life merely in terms of passing seasons and ticking clocks. Each day, each moment, holds potential for divine encounter and growth. Life ceases to be a series of random events and becomes a journey guided by a compassionate and all-knowing presence. In this way, our sense of hope expands beyond what we can see and understand. We develop patience with ourselves and with the unfolding of events, trusting that the process is as important as the destination. When we are caught in traffic, delayed in our plans, or confronted with the unexpected, we remember that God's timing has a purpose beyond our immediate comprehension. Furthermore, trusting God daily infuses our relationships with greater kindness and empathy. When we believe that God cares for us unconditionally, we become more willing to extend grace to others. Our trust in a divine plan equips us to forgive wrongs, to be patient with flaws, and to serve others without constantly calculating what we might gain in return. We begin to see people not merely as obstacles or means to an end, but as fellow travelers, each carrying unique burdens and stories. By practicing this compassion, we mirror the heart of God, thus extending our trust beyond ourselves and transforming the way we interact with the world. As the years unfold and we reflect on the times we have trusted God, we gather a treasury of testimonies that sustain and encourage us. We recall moments when all seemed lost until a beam of hope broke through, or seasons of doubt that miraculously turned into deepened faith. These personal stories become living proof that a daily posture of trust can yield fruit we never imagined possible when we first began. We may still face disappointments or unanswered questions, but those do not negate the reality of what we have already experienced. Instead, each new challenge becomes an invitation to build upon our ever-growing history with God. Trust in God daily is not a call to deny the pain or uncertainty of life. Rather, it is an invitation to see beyond them, to rise each morning with a gentle confidence that we are held, known, and loved. It asks us to break our fixation on control and to cultivate a spirit of surrender, not in passive defeat, but in holy anticipation of the ways God's grace can shift our circumstances or realign our priorities. It dares us to believe that even our setbacks can be stepping stones. Even our tears can water seeds of hope. and even our losses can pave the way for a greater revelation of divine purpose. To trust God daily is to embrace a journey, one that transforms how we see ourselves as the world around us. It leads us into deeper communion with the divine, opens our hearts to compassion, and instills in us a resilient faith capable of weathering the fiercest storms. If you find yourself longing for that kind of anchored peace in the midst of life's turbulence, may this reflection inspire you to pause, turn your gaze upward, and lean into the one who has been waiting all along. Let your trust become a living testimony, a daily choice that speaks hope into your darkest doubts and reminds you that you are never walking alone.